Hello class, my name is William and today I'll be presenting my ASCI 490 Capstone Presentation and SWOT analysis on my project, the National Pilot Shortage and its effect on airline staffing. As the regional airline captain, this problem is familiar to me and one that is severely impacting the industry.
The National Pilot Shortage and its effect on airline staffing. Presentation and SWOT analysis. Submitted to the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University Worldwide Campus in partial fulfillment of the requirements of course ASCI 490, the Aeronautical Science Capstone course for the Bachelor of Science in Aeronautics degree, April 2020. The background and scope. The United States has a shortage of qualified pilots affecting the airline industry and efficient airline operation. The shortage has caused reductions in service, grounding of aircraft, and an increase in recruiting efforts. The shortage can be attributed to increased retirements and mandatory retirement age, high flight training costs and decreased new pilot supply after economic stagnation, low wages, and crew rest requirements. The scope of the investigation focuses on the depreciating pool of pilots at United States regional airlines. Global figures are discussed, however, North America is the primary boundary for the research. Many regional airlines are owned by or are contracted by legacy airlines. The shortage primarily affects the regional airlines, with secondary effects at legacy airlines. The recommendations to address the effects of the national pilot shortage. Recommendations to address the pilot shortage involve modifications within the four core focuses of the airline industry: aviation, aerospace, aeronautical science, aviation legislation and law, aviation safety, aviation management and operations. Current aviation and aeronautical issues within the industry. The high cost of flight training. Flight training encompasses flying skill development, as well as aeronautical knowledge such as weather, human factors like fatigue, regulations, etc. The national average for flight training currently is between $150,000 to $200,000, with some establishments such as Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University charging $250,000. The declining number of pilots in the United States. In 1978, there were 798,000 pilots, and in 2017, there were 609,000 pilots, a nearly 30% reduction. The projected worsening pilot shortage at regional airlines. Regional Airline Association describes the looming pilot shortage and that the industry is at a tipping point. Recommendations to address this issue: airline subsidized flight training. It gives financial relief to prospective pilots. It ensures a higher percentage of pilots in training will complete the training. Currently only 12% do. And it allows for an increase in knowledge in aeronautical subjects like fatigue, aircraft systems, and weather, all contributing factors to the Colgan Air 3407 crash. Aviation legislation and law that are contributing to the pilot shortage. Title 14, Code of Federal Regulations, Part 121. These are the federal codes or rules that regulate airlines and pilots that work for these airlines. The Airline Safety and Federal Aviation Administration Extension Act of 2010. This was implemented by the United States Senate and Congress in conjunction with the Federal Aviation Administration and the National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, recommendation. It increased the minimum flight time for airline pilots. Additionally, the Fair Treatment of Experienced Pilots Act, 14 CFR 21.440, was signed into law in 2007, raising the mandatory retirement age from 60 to 65. That delayed the imminent need for pilots. However, it did not solve the problem. Recommendations to address this. Legislation increasing mandatory retirement age from 65 to 67. This is a short-term solution that lawmakers can instill until long-term solutions are more developed. Aviation safety. There has been legislation to improve aviation safety. However, it unintentionally has contributed to the pilot shortage. The Airline Safety and Federal Aviation Administration Extension Act, mentioned in the previous slide, was in response to the Colgan Air Flight 3407 accident. It raised the minimum flight time requirements for pilots from 250 to 1,500 hours. Additionally, the flight crew member duty and rest requirements were increased in 2011. Since then, both the rule changes have led to no fatal airline crashes since 2009. What the flight crew member duty and rest requirements did was increase pilot staffing needs by 5 to 8%. Recommendations to address this: after we need to alter pilot rest requirements to still allow for adequate rest, but allow for more efficient scheduling. This will lower the amount of pilots needed to cover flying. Aviation management and operations. Management and operational issues have exacerbated the pilot shortage. Operations and service at over 150 United States markets has decreased or lost seats in recent years. Aircrafts have become grounded. Service has completely stopped to 27 cities. An aging airline pilot group, with over 50% of pilots working for airlines are over the age of 50. These are affecting the airline operations and their forecasts. Increased travel demand and aircraft deliveries. Wages increasing, but they are still low compared to legacy carriers. Foreign carriers are more competitive for new pilots. Recommendations: regional airlines increasing wages to become more competitive for pilot labor. They would draw more pilots from foreign carriers, allow for financial relief if airlines are unable to pay for the full cost of flight training, and create a more financially attractive job for prospective pilots. Conclusion: the solutions to the national pilot shortage include recommendations focusing on the 4 program outcomes. For aviation, aerospace, and aeronautical science, the solution would be airline subsidized flight training. For aviation, legislation and law, legislation increasing mandatory retirement age. For aviation safety, altering pilot rest requirements. And for aviation management and operations, regional airlines increasing pilot wages. The SWOT analysis. Internal strengths would be increased amount of pilots finishing training, higher wage satisfaction, rest changes allowing for more efficient schedules and fewer pilots required, improve current and future pilot recruiting, improve standard for flight and aeronautical skills training, an increase in retirement age immediately provides hiring relief. Now, the internal weaknesses. Legislation changes may be financially expensive and time-consuming. Flight training facilities have inadequate capacity. Rapid number of retirements still create a looming shortage. Airline union contract negotiations and agreement regarding pilot pay and rest. Economic distress for airlines subsidizing flight training. The external opportunities. Legislation allowing pilots to fly past 65 can prevent many healthy pilots from having to retire early. More pilot candidates across the country being able to afford flight training. Pilot wage increases may lead to other jobs in the industry receiving wage increases. And foreign airlines may adopt subsidized flight training if successful in the United States, helping the global pilot shortage. External threats. Altering airline pilot rest requirements may compromise safety and cause more pilot fatigue. Increased pilot pay may create economic distress for regional airlines and the national economy. Increasing retirement age alone would only delay the impacts of the pilot shortage, creating a worsening national crisis. Increasing retirement age could jeopardize airspace safety, allowing individuals with higher susceptibility for health issues to operate commercial flights. The analysis. Continued retirements and growing pilot scarcity threatens the operation of regional airlines and subsequently the aviation industry and national economy. Reviewing all the recommendation strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats, airline subsidized flight training carries the most benefits. This would improve recruiting, build aeronautic and flying skills, lower financial burden for incoming pilots, and increase the number of pilots finishing training. The raising of the mandatory retirement age carries the threat of compromising flight safety and is a short-term solution. Regional pay increases may create economic distress for said airlines. Rest requirements negatively impact the pilot shortage, however, they increase safety. Slight reductions to rest requirements may provide hiring relief while not jeopardizing safety. However, this may be a volatile solution. The constantly evolving and changing airline industry requires monitoring and swift corrective actions, as retirements and growing hiring needs escalate the pilot shortage and endanger the operation for U.S. regional and legacy airlines. References included in the presentation.